What is the scariest missing person case you know about? Story 1. Terrence Williams disappeared in 2004. He's the subject of a fascinating podcast called The Last Ride. The short version is that he was taken into custody in Naples, Florida, after being pulled over in the early hours for traffic violations. He was never seen again. The deputy that pulled him over tried to conceal the traffic stop, even from his own organization, but staff opening a local business saw the whole thing. When the sheriff's department finally looked into it, they discovered the deputy was involved in a similar disappearance of a man named Felipe Santos in 2003. To this day, the deputy claims no knowledge of Williams's whereabouts, despite being caught out in a series of lies. Story 2. Paddy Moriarty and his dog Kelly went missing in an outback town in Australia with a population of 12 people. Last seen leaving the pub, riding his quad bike the 1 kilometer distance to his house. He or his dog have never been found, and no one has been charged in relation to his disappearance. Story 3. Brandon Swanson. He drove into a ditch and called his parents for help. They stayed on the phone with him for 47 minutes while they drove around looking for him. They heard him say, "Oh, crap." Then the phone went silent. They eventually found his car far away from where he said he was, but he was never found. Reading this was absolutely chilling. It seems at first glance that it's most likely he drowned, but that really doesn't make sense, because the water was only 10 feet deep and they would have found the body. He just suddenly said, "Oh, crap," and the phone went silent, but he did not hang up. The phone call continued with total silence from his end. What the hell happened to him? Story 4. Mary Lou Bostwick. She disappeared July 18th, 1972, from Waverly, New York. She was dropped off by her dad to babysit at a friend's house. This was also her 16th birthday. Her mom stopped by later with the cake and presents. The people in the apartment told her that Mary never showed up. However, her bag was in the residence. Nothing else was ever found. There was another girl around the same age, Sharon Costin, who was abducted and murdered in a nearby town about a year later, October 1983 in Sayre, Pennsylvania. There was a man convicted of that, but he always denied doing anything to Mary. One of the people who testified against him and was given immunity was a suspect in Mary's case. Mary's mom thinks there's a connection, but nothing was ever really found. I've sadly never seen anyone cover her disappearance on any of the podcasts or YouTube shows. Story 5. Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès. The whole family, parents and 4 kids, went missing overnight in 2011. Employers, school, and family received weird letters informing of their absence or departure, one of them saying they are going into a witness protection program. 2 weeks later, they found the corpses of the mother, the kids, and the dog hidden behind the house. They investigate and retrace the father's whereabouts in the south of France. He was last seen leaving a hotel a few days before. The region was thoroughly searched, but he was never to be found. Story 6. Marshall Awasa, good guy, came back to his hometown to visit his family and friends. Everything by all accounts was good. Left to take the 2-hour drive to where he was living and never made it. Instead, it was recorded he spent the entire night trying to get into a storage unit and then nothing. A week or maybe more. His truck was found 12 hours away on a back road in the middle of the woods, burnt to a crisp with belongings thrown about everywhere. No sign of Marshall, and from what I remember, the family was adamant that some of the things inside the truck, burnt or not, were missing, things they knew he had. The truck was even missing parts. It's been 4 years and there's never been an answer. It makes me sad and fearful of long travels. From what I know of him, he was a fantastic friend. I hope they get closure one day. Story 7. Asha Degree. She went missing at the age of 9 from Shelby, North Carolina, United States. In the early morning hours of February 14th, 2000, for reasons unknown, she packed her book bag, left her family home north of the city, and began walking along nearby North Carolina Highway 18, despite heavy rain and wind. Several passing motorists saw her when one turned around at a point 1.3 miles, 2.1 kilometer, from her home and began to approach her. She left the roadside and ran into a wooded area. In the morning, her parents discovered her missing from her bedroom. No one has seen her since. Story 8. Bryce Lespisa. He was driving to his parents' house, 3 HRs, after an argument with his girlfriend, apparently due to his alcohol and video game addiction and abuse of prescription medication. Partway through the drive, he pulled off the highway and just sat there from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. A roadside assistance guy checked on him twice and said he seemed fine, coherent, and Bryce told him he would be carrying on back to his parents shortly. Sometime later, his car was found only a few miles away, driven off the embankment, and he was nowhere to be found. Story 9. William Tyrrell. In 2014, the 3-year-old boy went missing from his foster grandmother's yard. whilst playing with his sister. His foster mother and grandmother were apparently watching them play outside, and the foster mother went inside to make a cup of tea. They then noticed they hadn't seen or heard him in a while and searched the house and yard. In 2021, police began searching national parkland near the grandmother's home for human remains. They also revealed that the foster mother and grandmother were persons of interest in his presumed death. Earlier today, the foster mother pleaded guilty to assaulting another foster child that was in her care, 10-year-old girl. She has also been charged with intimidating and stalking a minor. Her husband has also been charged with the same crimes, but plead not guilty to all counts. The foster grandmother is now dead. Basically, police believe that William died whilst in the care of the foster family, and they disposed of his body to cover it up. Police are recommending that the foster parents be charged with perverting the course of justice and interfering with a corpse. His photos went viral at the time of the disappearance. He went missing whilst in a Spider-Man costume, and the photo that was distributed was taken minutes before. Story 10. Rebecca Reusch disappeared in Berlin, Germany, from her sister's house right before leaving for school in 2019. She was alone with her sister's husband, who was a suspect for some time. He was seen driving on a highway towards Poland the morning of her disappearance and couldn't explain why. Used drugs as an explanation. Some of Rebecca's belongings are missing, as well as the belt of a bathrobe and the blanket. Dogs found traces of Rebecca, such as hair and such, in the Bill's car. Even though her family was caught up in contradictions so far, investigators couldn't prove anything. Her sisters and parents don't believe the Bill did anything and still think Rebecca is alive somewhere. No one has seen her since. Story 11. Wendy Goon on YouTube did a video on them that's pretty succinct in telling the story, but to sum it up, the Yuba County Five. It's been a while, so I may be misremembering some details, so I recommend watching it or looking it up yourself. Five guys head out to a basketball game out of town and never come back. Their car is found halfway up a freezing mountain in the dead middle of winter, over 200 miles from their hometown. Evidence was later found at a small station further up the mountain that at least two of them stayed there, but didn't light any fires, and most curiously, didn't even turn on the gas heating system in the shed outside that would have kept them alive. These guys drove 200 miles away from where they were headed, up a freezing mountain in the middle of a snowstorm. If someone or something was following them, and that's why they veered so far off their course, then what the hell was it that made them that terrified to the point they didn't even light a fire or use the heating system that would have saved them? Story 12. It's no longer a missing person case, and I'm so sorry, but I can't remember her name. But somewhere in Mexico, I think there was a family with two daughters. Their maids lived with them. The older daughter got walked to her bus, stopped by the maids. And when they came back, the younger, I think she was 5, was missing. The parents were still asleep and woke up to the maids looking for the girl. They couldn't find her in or around the home. Turned into a huge police case, searched the entire house, had news reporters in, and sat on the girl's bed. A few weeks later, the girl was found dead, stuffed between her mattress and the wall. The worst part is that the parents were so unbothered, father just sighed and left for work, and the mother was stood in the kitchen, smoking and drinking, while the maids were looking, while the police and reporters were in the house. Story 13. Amos Mortier. He went missing from his home in Madison, Wisconsin, November 2004, along with his dog, Gnosis. His friends and mother became worried after not hearing from him for weeks. His friends broke into his house to find it cold, dark, halfway unpacked, his dog's food bowl full, and a record player playing eerie music throughout the house. There was also a check from his grandmother on a desk. His dog, Gnosis, would later be found at a neighbor's house miles away. He was unharmed but skittish. This was cause for alarm since Amos took Gnosis with him everywhere. The police did not take Amos's case seriously and stopped looking for him after 3 days of searching. He had friends who were involved in the local drug trade. Amos might have been selling marijuana. Foul play is suspected in his case, ranging from his friends to a police cover-up. The police have been absolute crap at handling his case. I might have some details off. It's been a while since I've looked at his case, but it is so much weirder than what I posted. Story 14. Chance Englebert. Chance. Leslie Englebert was a 25-year-old husband and father who had recently taken a new job in Moorcroft, Wyoming, before he disappeared while visiting his in-laws in Gering, Nebraska, on July 6, 2019. Just a week before Chance disappeared, he lost his job. The coal mine where he had worked as a welder laid off 600 employees. Chance knew he had to find a job quickly, so he accepted a position with the local propane company. He would start his new job when he returned from a 4th of July visit with Bailey's family in Gering, Nebraska. Chance, his wife Bailey, and their 3-month-old son made the 220-mile drive to visit her grandparents in Gering, Nebraska. On Saturday, July 6th, Chance went golfing with Bailey's dad and her sister's boyfriend. Bailey spoke with Chance while he was on the course, and he seemed to be in a good mood. She said the guys were drinking and having fun together. A short time later, Chance called her back and asked her to pick him up. He said he was upset over a comment one of his golf partners made about his new job. Bailey said they didn't argue on the way back to her grandparents' house, but when they pulled into the driveway, Chance got out of the car and walked away. Bailey said at first she wasn't concerned, because when Chance got upset, he would sometimes take a walk to cool off. After Chance walked out of view, Bailey tried calling him, and when he didn't answer, she went looking for him, but she couldn't find him. He finally picked up her call at 7:46 p.m., told her he was walking south toward Kimball, and hung up. Later reports from his friends indicated he had told them he was walking north toward Torrington, Wyoming. The last known person to speak with Chance was his friend Matt Miller around 8:46 p.m. Chance's aunt received a cryptic text message from him at 9:08 p.m., and shortly after, his phone went dark. A strong thunderstorm blew through Gering around 9 p.m. that evening. Bailey's family speculated he may have sought shelter inside a local business or nearby building. When the storm was over, Bailey's grandfather drove around town looking for Chance, but his search came up empty, and no one has heard from Chance since. Story 15. Michael Chambers, a retired firefighter that went missing, disappeared from his house in 2017. No evidence of anything besides a puddle of blood and a missing bike. We all had a feeling the Michaels wife had something to do with it. It also helped she had history with the corrupt sheriff. Her husband knew of an affair she was having just 6 months before he disappeared. They just discovered a body with a bike this year at the lake, not too far from his home. It was confirmed to be him. His wife got a death certificate just 2 months after his disappearance. Story 16. The Springfield Three, Suzanne Streeter, Stacy McCall, and Streeter's mother, Cheryl Levitt, went missing from Levitt's home in Springfield, Missouri. Suzanne and Stacy graduated high school on June 6, 1992, and were last seen leaving a graduation party around 2 a.m. on June 7, 1992. The girls had plans to meet their friends for activities the next morning, and when they didn't show up, a couple friends went to the home looking for them. The home was intact with no signs of violence, except a broken porch light. The three women's belongings, including purses and cigarettes, were all inside the home, undisturbed, but no sign of them. The friends accidentally deleted a voicemail that was potentially suspicious and trying to be helpful, cleaning up the broken light on the front porch. These things left police with no real clues, and over the years the police have investigated several suspects, but were unable to find any evidence of what happened to the women. Story 17. Emile. Very recently, a 2-year-old French little dude left his grandparents' yard for a walk around the village. He was seen by a couple of villagers who did nothing, and that was it. They searched the area for weeks, civilians and cops. They completely blocked off the village. No one could go in or out. Never found any evidence of foul play or a clue that he could have been eaten by a wild animal. It's been a couple of months now, and still nothing. Story 18. Fiona Pender. She was 7 or so months pregnant, was always in close contact with her family, and loved ones left her home and was never seen again. Fiona Pender, 25, of Tullamore, County Offaly, went missing on the 23rd of August, 1996. She was last seen leaving her ground floor apartment by her boyfriend, John Thompson, in Tullamore. Fiona was 7 months pregnant at the time of her disappearance. Fiona left her passport, clothing, and credit cards behind. However, there were no signs of a struggle found in the apartment, and it is believed that she left of her own accord and got in a vehicle. In 2008, a small wooden cross bearing the name Fiona Pender was found on the Sleeve Bloom Way at the border between Iowa and Offaly, which led to the belief that Fiona was buried in the Sleeve Bloom Mountain. Story 19. Harold Holt, 17th Prime Minister of Australia, while still in office, was a fan of dismantling the racist White Australia policy and did a lot of work towards that, believed in political accountability, and was our first Prime Minister, President, to have regular press conferences and TV interviews. His essential decency was perceived as weakness by his own party, but he won his election by a landslide of votes by the Australian people, was an excellent swimmer and spear fisherman, and was presumed drowned at one of his favorite beaches. His body was never found. Story 20. Jodi Huisentruit, former news anchor for Kimty in Mason City, Iowa. She went missing June 27, 1995, as she was leaving for work. She had just talked with her coworkers, saying she was running late and she's on her way. She never showed up, so her coworkers called the police to her apartment and saw signs of a struggle and found her things scattered around her car. I'm a local and only as old as long as she's been missing. She was declared legally deceased in 2001. But her case has always been a huge subject, and so many leads and theories get talked about still every now and then. There's fine Jodi billboards around Mason City for her that says, "Someone knows something. Is it you?" And a couple of years ago, someone spray painted one saying, "Frank Stern's machine shed," across the bottom. That billboard was quickly removed, though there's photos of it online. The dude was a longtime detective for the Mason City PD who worked on the case and apparently had a machine shed built around the time of her disappearance. There's also something about photocopies of Jodi's personal journal that anonymously got mailed to the local newspaper, who later turned out to be the wife of Mason City police chief, who had taken copies of the original journal that has been in police custody since her disappearance home with him. But I'm not sure much more info came out about it. Mason City officials have been accused of having been in on her abduction and or covering things up. I don't think they have been investigated. I read they've been a pain to work with or seem super sketchy with interviewers with certain things. Though with the many leads, nothing has been solid or concrete evidence. There's a lot more info online if anyone's looking for a rabbit hole. There's so much on the case. I only mentioned a few things and not as detailed either. Wild story. 21 Rachel Cook. Rachel was visiting her parents' home in Georgetown, Texas in early 2002. She was on winter vacation from her school at San Diego Mesa College in San Diego, California. She was last seen by her family in the early morning hours on January 10th, 2002, when her mother left for work. It is believed Rachel departed her family's residence at approximately 9:30 a.m. for her daily 4-mile run. Rachel was last seen approximately 200 yards away from her residence, walking towards her residence. Story 22. The Bradley sisters. I just did a special on them too. Their mom admits to leaving a 9 and 5-year alone in the apartment while she worked all day. But her two oldest were taken to grandma's. Why not all of them? Or why the oldest to youngest? Then in the special, the mom actually changed her tune because phone records prove the mom wasn't home that last night. She actually left them home alone overnight and all day. There was a note left saying they were going to the park, but they don't think the girls wrote it. There was a supposed voicemail left that some of the family heard, but that was accidentally erased before the cops heard it. That VM points to the boyfriend, but again, no proof it ever really existed. And the mom is just so infuriating about how she's upset that everyone thinks it's her fault. And it's not, she's doing the best she could, but like she wasn't. And it is her fault. Even if she's not actually responsible, I 100% think that she played a part in it, or the very least, is a horrible mom. There's even more irregularities, but yeah, super weird. Story 23. Arjan Koot was a Dutch cybersecurity expert who went missing while hiking in Norway. Initially, his plan was to visit Svalbard. However, unexpectedly, he traveled to Bodo instead. A good friend of his suggests this may have been because of his work, saying, "There's a pretty important NATO security center there. He definitely knows about that." He checked out of his hotel on the 20th of August, but he was not on his flight home. 3 weeks after his disappearance, Norwegian police found his kayak around the area where they had also found more of his belongings. A witness said they saw Arjan on the 30th of August, accompanied by 2 other men. On that day, his cell phone had also been switched on for 20 minutes, after which the SIM card was taken out and swapped with a different SIM. His body was never found and the case remains unsolved. Story 24. My uncle, mother's brother, from Mexico, recently visited our family in the USA. During his visit, we talked a lot about their uncle, mom, dad, teen adventures growing up in Mexico. One of the arteries involved how they would sneak into bull riding shows, jaripeos, instead of paying the entry fee. This reminded them of the following story that nobody in their town has been able to explain. One day, as the show was gearing up to open up, a random white-colored bull showed up at the site. None of the bull owners knew who that bull belonged to, but since he was there, they decided to put the bull in the show. Fast forward, and it's time for the white bull to go next. A local rider decides he wants to ride the white bull, sets up, gets into position, and off they go. After a few seconds of galloping, not sure if this is the term, the bull suddenly starts to head towards one of the sides of the ring, and to everyone's surprise, jumps straight over the fence into the crowds, before disappearing over the horizon. The strange part here is that the rider was still on the bull, and to this day, nobody has heard or seen the rider or the white bull. It makes no sense why the rider didn't just let go and fall off the bull. It was as if he could not let go, or something was holding him there. Anyway, that is one of my favorite stories that my family has ever told. Story 25. I was looking for the name of Sky Metalwala, missing since 2011, 2.5 years old. Mother said he was sick, so she put him in the car to go to the hospital. She said she ran out of gas and left Sky in the car to go get gas. When she returned 90 minutes later, he was gone. Police found her car to have plenty of gas, and that her story was similar to a Law and Order SVU episode aired the previous evening. Parents were involved in an acrimonious custody battle that mom refused to participate in the mediation of. I don't care who did it, but one of these parents needs to be found guilty. I just don't understand why nothing has happened, and this baby is still missing. So many layers to this story. But she had an older child and a baby born after Sky's disappearance, removed from her care by DSSS. Anyway, in looking for the story, a headline popped up that 9 kids have gone missing in Washington so far this year.